All right, welcome everyone to the R workshop for Plot-A-Thon. So I've had that slide up, but this is my basically introduction slide. And yeah, this should be an exciting session where we're just going to be very interactive. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what you need to all we're going to be working on, and we should just have fun and learn some more. So before we do that, if you want to access these slides, I highly recommend you actually just going to this link. So what you can do is like either copy that down. I would recommend you take a picture of it so that you can access some of the things in there. That way it's a little bit easier for you to download some things instead of like me writing everything down. Okay. Yes.
We had a question. We have to install everything on the installation slide.
You should have at least R and RStudio installed. And then the packages, tidyverse. So those are the main ones. Everything else, for the most part, is optional. If you're on Windows, R tools may be optional. We'll see. If you have problems, it's probably that R tools session. Okay. Now, just a show of hands, how many of you ever used R before? Okay, like a good chunk of you. How many of you attended the other Plot-A-Thon workshops? How many of you attended the Python workshop? Okay, so R and Python very similar in nature. And so you're going to see a lot of similarities between them. It's just like a different type of programming language, different type of thinking for the most part. All right, so hopefully everyone's got the website. So let's get started. So we're first going to talk about installation, R packages, R projects, RStudio layout, scripts, loading data, plotting, and Esquisse. Now, this last slide, Esquisse, I honestly don't know how to even pronounce that word. I think it's French. Does anyone know what that word is? Yeah, but it's something interesting that I think a lot of you may want to use later on. So we'll talk about it later. But first, let's talk about installation. So how many of you have a computer here? So I think the majority of you. How many of you installed R before? Okay, so y'all have R installed. Use 4.3. That's the latest version. Yeah, use 4.3 for the most part. That would work. Now, how many of you have installed RStudio? Okay, great. So why do I have to install two different things, R and RStudio? Well, R, you can think about that as the engine, and RStudio is like the steering wheel, the brakes, everything that controls that engine. So RStudio allows you to basically manipulate a lot of things about that engine so you can do what you need to do. It is a very nice way to package everything together. If you do not have the steering wheels and brakes, you can still use the engine essentially, but it is much more difficult to execute. So we like to use RStudio. It have become the standard for our users in order to run data analysis and data visualization. Now, for those of you that are Windows, if you're going to be doing anything like compiling using like C++, things like that, you're going to have to install R tools. But for the most part, I predict that you don't need it. But if you do run into some errors, chances are it might be because you're missing this dependency. Okay. And then for those of you that either you can't install R or RStudio on your computer, or if you are, or for whatever reason, you don't have like a very powerful computer, or you're on like an iPad or a Chromebook, you can use what's known as PosiCloud. It's basically RStudio in the cloud. So you could do a lot of the analysis in PosiCloud as well. And then here's the link for that. So then let's talk about R packages. So R can do a lot of great things. However, it can't do everything. And so there is a huge community that is actually have developed packages that allow you to extend the functionality of R. One of those functionalities is tidyverse. And I recommend you to install tidyverse in your R session. Now, this is how you'll do it. So there are two ways you do it. You could either copy this, open up RStudio, and in RStudio, the console, you're gonna paste that, and then hit enter, and it should run. And it says warning, R tools is not installed, so some of them won't work, but for the most part, the majority of things should work. And as you can see, it is running. And it might take a while for some of y'all to get it to work. Okay? But Tidyverse is essentially a universe of packages that makes data analysis and visualizations much easier for you to do. Okay? And then everything got installed, it should work out. So if you haven't installed Tidyverse, I would encourage you to install it right now for both everyone here and everyone online. Okay. Another way to install Tidyverse or any package is, and I understand it's very difficult to see here, but there is a packages tab right here where you see my mouse. If you click on the packages tab and click install, you could then type in Tidyverse and it will do this, do everything for you. So click on it, install, it's gonna run everything the same way. So you could do it either way. Okay. And then because I've already installed it, then everything should work. Okay. So let's move on. How many of you are installing Tidyverse here? Okay. So definitely install that because we're going to be using it later on. Another version is Plot-A-Thon. Plot-A-Thon kind of makes your graphs interactive. And so we're going to use it. So same thing, either copy and paste the code here, and then let just RStudio do its thing. And as you can see, like in my Windows computer here, it does not have R tools installed. So if there are any problems, then I will be troubleshooting and you can see it live. All right. Next one is GG Themes. I would recommend you installing that package the same way, copy and paste it. This allows you to make better graphics. So we're going to use ggplot2 to make our graphics. GG Themes makes the graphs feel differently. Okay. And then lastly, Esquisse, copy that. And I installed it already to make sure that it would work. Updating, yes, I had it running, so. I would recommend installing this, and there's a reason why. Okay, hopefully that goes well. All right, seems like it's working. Yeah, of course it's gonna crash. All right, crash, no, that's fine. So that's all the packages that at least we are gonna be using for this workshop, but there's plenty more packages out there. There is a package out there called Theme Park, and Theme Park allows you to make the plots. It's kind of like GG Themes, but it changes how the plots look like, but it changes it in a way of different movies. So they have an Oppenheimer theme, a Barbie theme, they have a Super Mario Brothers theme. So there's a lot of different packages that we can use. And then it's not limited to like visualization. There are some other R packages that you can use that will allow you to advance its capabilities. So you could run machine learning models, etc. So a lot of packages for a lot of things. And I believe CRAN currently has around like 10,000 packages, which is its repository. All right. So once you have the packages installed, you're going to need to load these packages into R. So you only need to install them once, but you have to load them every single time you start a new session. And to do that, you are just going to be using the library function, where you're going to type in library, and then within the function itself, And you could tell if it's a function when it has parentheses. You're just going to type in the name of the package right there. So what I'm going to do is copy that and paste it and then run them. And it's just going to take its time, probably. There we go. Plotly. Oh. This is an older version. That's fine. All right. So that's that. So let me go back to my slides. They're kind of like my guide. Let's talk about our projects next. So how many of you have completed a data analysis project before? Or completed some kind of project like that? How many of you have written a paper for a class? Hope all of you, right? Now, with your papers, you have to store those places in a location. You have to organize things. Maybe you downloaded articles that you have to read. You might have some images that you put in that document as well. And it becomes a huge mess, right? How many of you have like 50 versions named final draft? And then final draft or something like that. So it becomes a nightmare after a while. Our projects is Posit's answer to try to fix a little bit of that. You use Git as well, but basically some way that we could try to organize things in a different way. And there are good reasons why. So our projects are designed to contain all your data, scripts, and output in one location. This ensures that things are compatible with other computers. How many of you are Windows users? How many of you are Mac users? Okay. And guess what? Sometimes you got to work with each other. And so how many of you try to work with other users? There's a compatibility issue, usually a problem. Windows does one thing, Mac does another thing. So it gets a challenge. Our projects tries to answer that as well to make sure that everything is compatible in some way. That's not perfect, but it does a fairly good job. Okay. So today we're going to be showing what our projects is. Now, before I tell you why we're doing our projects is, I want you to go into RStudio and I want you to type get wd and then that. Okay. How many of you have something that looks like this or very similar? How many of you, question? Yeah. Once you've installed everything, console, you're going to click on the console. You're going to type this out. How many of you, it looks something different? Mac people probably look different. This is a Windows machine. Mac people might not have this little C, and a few other things are different, right? So that's a problem. Like, okay, we need to get everything there. Now, how many of you know what this is? Right here. You know what's called? A directory, a file path. It is something, right? What is the point of this directory or working directory? It tells you where on your computer you're working at. Okay? And if you don't know how to use this, it becomes a challenge right there. So file paths, working directories, directories in general. So directory is kind of like a fancy word for folder on a computer. So when you open up, let's say, your documents app, or I don't know what the Mac version is, Binder, you have things saved. So you can go to your documents, see what's saved there. Okay, we have a Plot-A-Thon, my Halloween exploration. I'm probably exposing whoever's computer this is. But you have things saved, and you need to know the location of that thing, where that thing is saved. So to answer that question, or to make it a little better for us, what we're going to do is we're going to create an R project. And then that would make sure that all our directories are going to be the same. So I want all y'all to follow along. Well, let's see. Up here in the top right corner is called project. And notice that it says none. So I want you to click on that and click on new project. And then just don't save that. That's if you have like an image, don't worry about it. And then a window should pop up. And then what you're going to do is you're going to click a new directory. And then you're going to just click a new project. But notice that you could click many types of projects. If you want, you could create your own R package. You could create what's known as a Shiny app. We could talk about that in another day. And then some Quarto documents, and then a few other R packages with different capabilities, let's say. But for right now, we're going to click new project. Then you'll type in the directory name. So was that me? No, I don't think so. I'm just going to call it Plot-A-Thon. Okay. And then I'm going to browse where I'm going to save it at. I'm going to save it in the documents for right now, just so it's there. And it's a different name from this Plot-A-Thon. So, okay. And then that's about it. Now, if you want, you could click this RENV environment. But my advice for you is to not do it right now. If you're a computer scientist, go for it. You know what's going on. If not, do not touch it. It will make your life harder. All right. So Plot-A-Thon, create a project. Directory plot already. Oh, yes. So I'm going to call it Plot-A-Thon 2. I guess it is not case sensitive. And then so there you go. And then up here, it's probably hard to see, at least for here. You now have that. And then remind later. Yes, I know you're old. And then now, notice that your project is Plot-A-Thon here. Right here. Plot-A-Thon 2 in this case. So now you have like a controlled environment that you can put everything in there for your R. So now, for example, if I, hopefully that worked, close it down, and then I open up RStudio again. So close down RStudio, and it's really, really slow. It's now back at the Plot-A-Thon 2, okay? If I had other projects, it'll list them right here, and I could open that right there. If I wanted to open a project, I could just click on here. So now everything is in a contained file, okay? So it's like a little project. Now, when you're conducting a data analysis project, there's a few folders that we should all use. Data, output, and scripts. And you should save those things based off of that. Your data, you obviously put your data, right? Your output are your plots, your documents, anything that R produces for you, you should probably save it here, and scripts. Those are the code that you use to produce that output, okay? And the reason why is it makes sure that everything is organized. Now, I have a few other directories in there that I like to use, like I call it source files, I call it R scripts. I kind of go a little bit more familiar, but overall, this is generally the three things that you should have. So how do we create those directories or folders in RStudio? Well, if you have this files tab clicked, there's a new folder, and then you just create them one at a time. Data, output, and then what was the other one? Scripts. Okay, and it's right there. So take a moment and try to create those folders in this R project. Okay. So how many of you were able to create these folders in your R project? How many of you were able to create the R project itself? Okay, good. So now we have everything set up. So now let's talk about the RStudio layout. Now, generally speaking, there's scripts, consoles, environment, files, and everything else. When you first open up RStudio, it looks like this. Now, I made some modifications to it. I made sure the text is bigger, so it's easier for all y'all to see what's going on. But it only really affected what's known as a console. This is the console. The console allows you to do basic functionalities, basic commands. This is the environment. The environment tells you what are the variables that you created or objects that you created. Objects are just, think about them as containers of data that you may create in R. You can see here, this is the files location. You also have a few things like plots, packages, help documentation, viewer, and presentation. We'll talk about those later. And there's a few other tabs there that are nice if you're an advanced user, but for right now, you could just ignore. But the main thing that you need to know is console, environment, files, plots, and packages. And we'll talk about plots in a little bit. We already talked about packages and how to install that. So in RStudio, when you are doing a command, let's say I want to add two numbers together. That's going to be it. We could go to the R console and make sure I have that. I could do like 2 + 2. And I get that. And I'm going to delete that so it's a little bit easier. All right. 2 + 2 is equal to 4. Do we all agree with that, right? Okay. What about 3 + 3? You hit enter, should give you 6. You can do a lot of great things. Chew, caret, chew. What do you think that's going to do? Exponent. It's going to raise 2, or let me do, instead of 2, 3. What number would that be? 8, right? 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. You can also do 2 double star 3, and it will give you 8. So the console does things. Now, let's talk about creating an object. Let me say X, and I want to store a value called chew. So when you're creating an object, you can type in any word. How about this? Instead of X, let's be creative. I'm gonna say Swift, Taylor Swift, and I'm gonna store 2 in there. So to store, I'm gonna create an object. Swift was just a random word. And then to save something, this kind of looks like a left arrow. The way that when I read it, it looks like a left arrow. So create an arrow, which is gonna be the left arrow key and then the minus sign, and then you place something in there, chew. Okay. So now notice that my environment populated with a value. So this chew. This is a number, so we could do things with that number. So what would you think Swift raised to the 3rd power is going to be? 8, right? Swift. What if we take the log of Swift? It's a number. That's all you know, right? You take the log. Now, for the most part, all languages, when you write in log, it means natural log.
Not base 10.
It's not base 10. If we want the log base 10, we're going to do log 10. Okay. So let me write 10. So when we do the log of Swift, if it was base 10, it should be 1. And that's just math. But it's not. But if we do log of 10, oh, wrong log. That should be Swift. Then it's 1, right? So just letting you know, read up on the functions and what they do. We saw log, but it's actually natural log. That is weird. But how do we read up on these functions? Well, there are a couple of ways that you can do this. If you put a $sign, or not a dollar, a question mark in front of a function, so log, and you hit enter, the help documentation will pop up and it tells you information. So log computes the logarithms by default natural logarithms. Log 10 computes the common log or base 10. So if you want to learn more about these functions, put in question mark in the name of function without the parentheses. So I want y'all to do this. Do question mark and then mean. We all know what mean does, right? What does it do? What should happen? How many of you got something different in your help documentation? No, my bad. It changes, and it tells you it computes the arithmetic mean. Okay, which is the standard average that all of y'all probably are familiar with. Okay, now let's say you do not remember that it is a question mark. What you can do is you can go to the help documentation and click here. So let's say I want to learn more about SD. What does it do? It is the standard deviation. Okay. Now, everything that I've done so far, how do y'all feel? So it's okay, right? We're just a very small introduction. So everything I've done is I put it in the console and it produced some kind of results. But what if I want to save whatever I put into the console? There are a couple ways that you can do that, but the best way to do that is by creating what's known as a script. A script can say, you can write code to it, send that code to the console, and then you could manipulate it and change it and save it so you have it later on. So to create an R script, you're going to click on this little plus sign with the green circle on the top, and it's going to say new file, and then we're going to create R script. And then something comes out. And so with this R script, this is where we're going to save our code. So I'm going to type in Swift, and then I'm going to put in, let's see, what is 1989? So we'll have that there. Now, what if I want to basically, if I want to run this on the code, there are two ways. First, if I want to run a specific selection, I could highlight it and hit run. If I want to just run a line, let's say, let me try something. Swift times 2. If I want to run a line, I could also just hit run, and as long as my cursor is on that line, it would work. So there we go. Another thing is, instead of just hitting run, let me see, Swift times 4. If I hit Control Enter, it will also work. On a, what's it called? Windows, Control Enter. On a Mac, it is Command Enter. Okay. So I want you to write these 3 lines, and you don't have to call it Swift or anything. Just create an object and play around with it. See what happens. If I want to run all 3, I just run it, Control or Command Enter, and they will run again. Okay, so now everything is in the script and we could run it multiple times. So what if I want to random simulate a normal distribution? So this is just statistics, or let me do a coin flip. So I want to do a coin flip, and then be honest, I don't remember this code. So I don't remember, I know it's sample, but I don't remember everything. So I'm gonna look at that. X is going to be my vector, which if you don't understand that, that's okay. And then I want a simple 1, and there you go. So if you write this, what do you think it's gonna do? It's gonna flip a coin, and it's gonna tell you if it's head or tails. So I run it once, I get heads. Right? What if I want to flip another coin? I'll run it again. And I keep on running it as many times as I want. Okay, I did something that's okay. Okay. Oh, wrong one. And notice that I don't have to write out the code again in my console. It's already saved in my script. I just have to have my cursor there, and it will do it all for me. Okay, so that's the power of scripts. It saves things so you can rerun things when you need to. However, we need to save the script. So to save something, there is a little floppy disk. How many of you know what a floppy disk is? Yes. It is just showing our ages, right? For those of us that do know. So click on the floppy disk, you save it, you're going to save it in scripts and then call it my scripts. Or you could call it anything, really. Okay, now it's saved. Now, with these 4 lines of code, we're just having fun, right? We weren't really doing anything real. So what if I want to remind myself that with these next 4 lines, I was just having fun? So I want to write myself a note. To do that, we're going to create something known as a comment. And you're just going to use a hashtag. And then I'm just going to say having fun for lines 2 through 5. Okay, you don't have to be as descriptive, but you just have to say something that you want to do there. So having fun is one. And when you have a comment, try running it and see what happens. When you run it, nothing happens. Well, when you just run that. So let me do that. It just prints it out, but R won't actually execute anything. Now, what if I want to run everything but except my sample? So I run everything except for my sample. If I don't want R to execute the sample, I could just comment that out and then run it. And as you can see, the sample does not run. So that is one good way to debug things or eliminate things. Just comment it out. Okay. Another thing that you can do is Control-Shift-C, and it will comment multiple things. Let's say I didn't want to call this Swift anymore. I wanted to call Bad Bunny. So you can do, one way you can do this is like, okay, you could switch it to Bad Bunny, copy this, paste, copy this and paste, right? So another great thing about RStudio is if you hit Control, Alt, and down, you extend your cursor. And what that does is it will allow you to change everything. Yeah. Probably Command, Alt. That'll be my best guess. I know this is good for Windows and Linux. So now you might be at, yes. For Windows, Control Alt and then down. Just click out the down key. Okay. Now you might be asking yourself, why do I need to do this? The reason why is there's a lot of times that you're gonna have to be changing multiple names. Yeah, control option, gotcha. You have to be changing the names, and if they're all lined up, it's easier to change one name than multiple names at the same time. It just saves you time. Okay. All right, yes.
There is a finer place.
Okay, control, that too. You could do that, but what if you don't want to change everything? Yes, so it just gives you an extra control. All right, so I'm gonna save this. So we were just talking, having fun. Now let's get actually to do some real work. So we had like a very small introduction of R. Now, in terms of project analysis with your script, the very first thing that you should put in are your libraries or your packages. So let's just assume I did not have that. The very first thing is when you're doing a data analysis is your libraries. And what I'm going to do is I already have my libraries. Okay, what was I going to talk about? Scripts. Okay. Libraries. Where's my library? So I'm just going to copy these because I don't want to write them out. And I paste them. And then every time when you run it, your libraries are on the top. And then we make sure that everything works. Okay. Now, what is the next thing that you think we should put in next in our script? The data, right? You got to load the data. So my next time I'm going to say loading data, right? And I'm just going to add a few lines just so that it's always in the middle. So loading data. Now, what we're going to do is, let me get there. We are going to use the Owen Wilson Wiles data set. How many of you have heard of this data set or through the Canvas page, right? So we want to use this. Now, we'll see how this is going to work. If you copy this and you are in an R project, so if you copy this, and let's go back to files, you're in an R project and you're in this, it should work. These lines, if you copy and paste it, it should work. But we'll see if it doesn't work. I don't know if I. Okay, and if it did work, guess what? There's an Owen Wilson data set. So try it out. So go to your R projects and you paste it and you hit enter. Your data should have Owen Wilson files now in there. So what did R just do? It just downloaded data from you, for you, and it stored it in a data directory. Okay, now why did I show you how to do that? Well, the reason is because it's a lot easier for me to distribute data for y'all. So it is a lot easier for y'all to just like copy some code, paste it, and it does it automatically for you. Now, normally what you'll do is download the data set and then you'll move it through some Explorer and then move it here. But for right now, in my mind, it's like the fastest way to do it is just have R do it for you. So it shows you what is R is capable, and it's capable of a lot of things. Okay. So now this data set is located in the projects, but this Owen Wilson Wiles is not located in R, so we have to load the data set in. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this MDS, and to load a data set, we're going to use the read_CSV. Now you could use the read.csv, but they both work. And then if you put in, and I'm trying to remember that this is not my computer, data is data /Owen Wilson. And then if you hit tabs, it will do it for you. And then when you hit run, it loads the data. And now your environment has a data function. So try that out and see if it works. Now you can also click on copy this. This should also work as well. Okay. How many of you now have a data set located in RStudio in your environment? I might do this just for. This to make it easier to see, not really necessary though. So raise your hand if you got the data set loaded into R. And others are still working on it. Okay. So, how many of you were not able to do it? It looks like everyone was able to do it. What if you just do not know how to get this data set in? Another way that you can do it is if you click on the environment up here, there's something known as import data set. If you click on that, you could do a text file. So those are like your CSVs, your text, anything text related. You have a from Excel, from SPSS, from SAS, and from Stata. And so if you click on, let's say I had an Excel file, click on that, you're gonna search for it, and there's a little wizard for you. And then it gives you the code that you can copy and paste it. And in that way, if you don't remember the code, just use the import file. I actually recommend this to my students just because sometimes I forget myself. For the most part, it's always a CSV file, but if you don't remember, there is an import data set. And it has some capabilities. So it could do text files, Excel, and other standard formats. All right, so now we loaded this data set. So we have to look at it. There's a few ways that we can look at it. The first one is if you click on the environment, and there it is. This is how your data is going to look like. It tells you the type of movie that Owen Wilson was in, how long that movie is with the durations, when it was released, the day, year, and the number of wows in the movie. Okay, and then also an era that indicating like, okay, what era was he in? So the way that I got this is by clicking that. Now that's one way. Another way, just to view the data, you can click, you could type in a command. Glimpse is a great one. And then we could do MDS. And it gives you a quick little format of what's going on. Tells you the columns. It tells you the type of variable those columns are. If it's a character, meaning that it's a word, or if it is a number and how the number is stored. So like a double for the most part, that just means number with a decimal for them. Okay. And then etc. And it tells you how many columns there are and how many rows there are in this data set. So you could use the glimpse MDS to view that. Another option is, let's say you are only interested in just viewing the first few rows. So you can use a head function and it tells you a little bit of information there. Okay. So try around, see what you can see, what you cannot see. So now let's talk about creating our plots. So there are plenty of plots that we can do with this, and now we're not going to really need this console anymore because we're creating visuals. So first things first, when you create a plot, you want to type in the name of that data set, and then you're going to add what's known as a pipe. Now, if you do Control Shift M or Command Shift M, this is your pipe. Or you could just type in percent, right arrow, percent. Okay. Then to create a plot, you're going to type in ggplot. And then you're going to type in AES to tell you, okay, how you're going to map this. And in this case, I am going to say X is equal to the total wows in movies. And notice that it will actually tell you what it is, right? Or it will auto-populate if you just do that. And then, let's see. I am going to, what if I could, no, that wouldn't be nice. I'm going to do enter just to make it a little bit easier visually, but it will not have an effect on it. If you run this line, you'll get something like this. So what ggplot does is like, the idea behind it is based off the grammar of graphics. You can think about it how an artist makes a painting. So when you have an artist, if you're painting something, you first put down the base layer, right? You put like some base color, you put in the ground, you put in the sky, and then you add layers to the painting, right? The idea behind ggplot2 is it's that same thing. Are there any questions? Okay, so right now when you run this, you should have ggplot, you have AES, and it gives you this gray background. So now we have to add something to it. So to add something with ggplot, you go at the end of the line and you put a plus sign, and then I'm hitting enter just to make it visually easier to see. And then I am going to put in a type of variable. So the total wows, that's like a number. So what if I just want to put in histogram there? And so I run it and let's see if it works. And then there you go. There is your histogram. Okay. No, it's very hard to see. I am going to do something different. So I don't really like how long this variable is. It is very descriptive, but it is long. And if I had them in a smaller, if I was in a smaller text or like the text is smaller, it would be better. But because it's long, I am deciding to do is I'm going to create a new variable with an MDS, use that the mutate function. I'm going to call it wows, and then it's basically going to be total wows in the movie. Okay. And then I'm going to run that. And so now this was my my histogram. I'm going to change that to wows. Wows is just total wows. And so when you run that, nothing should change, right? Except for wows. It said total wows is wows. That way it's a lot easier for me to show you both the code and this. So you don't have to do that. It's just for me to better teach y'all. All right, histogram, great. What's another way that we could visualize data? A box plot. So what if I want a box plot instead? So instead of a histogram, I'm going to change GM into box plots. And when we run that, you're going to get that. And it tells you the distribution of the data of how that looks like. Okay. Now notice how much I'm repeating things. I'm just copying and pasting and changing little things here and there. But what if I decided to store this plot, the main part of the plot, in just one area? So I am going to put MDS, pipe, and then I'm just going to copy this. And I store it with my P instead. I'm just going to keep on using that. So I store the main part of my plots in an object called P. So now what I can do with this P is I could do P, lowercase p, plus geom box plot. And when I run that, it creates that. I could then change it, P plus geom histogram. It creates my histogram. I can also do geom density, and it will create my density plots. So the main idea is like everything stays the same, and we just need to change that part, as long as this is our main component. Okay. So are there any questions so far? Now, what if we saw that there's an error variable? So there is an error variable, and I'm going to call that double P. And I'm going to say color is equal to error. And then I'm going to store that there. What will happen? What do you think will happen to my box plot? Yeah. We'll get some kind of colors. I don't actually do not know if box plot will work on this. There you go. Notice that now it splits up the data based on the era of Owen Wilson. Okay. And so how many wows? You can see that there was a lot more wows in most of his recent movies compared to earlier. Interesting. What if I just want to do geom density? See how that looks like. Okay. Still very similar. A lot less wows in the earlier part of his career. Okay. So any questions on this? So now everything that I did right here were a single variable. We're only looking at wows, right? And then we looked at era. What if we're looking at two variables? Generally speaking, how do you plot two continuous variables? You create a scatter plot, right? So to create a scatter plot, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create our base function or base plot. Wrong one. Then I am going to type in my ggplot. My aesthetics, I'm going to say x is going to be duration over minutes. Now, this is just another random variable. And then my y is equal to wows. So I'm going to write that out. So I'm creating a new base plot where I'm going to have the two variables. So now, once I run that, I'm going to add gm point to create a, what's it called? A scatter plot. And then there are all their How many minutes versus how many whiles? Okay, so that's one approach. What if I want to color code them? So to color code them, one thing that we can do, and I'm just going to bring them down here. I'm going to hit enter. I am just going to add color. And then I am going to add an era to my base plot. I'm going to call this P4 just to make sure I have something different. So then P4 plus GM point. They should all look color coded. And I know it's very difficult to see. So because we can't see them, I'm going to change my size to like 4. And then that's a little bit better. Now, some of you may not have known, oh, how did I know that you can change size like that? Unfortunately, it's just years of practice. I've been using this a really long time, so I know a lot of things. Okay, yes.
Is it like all that help page too?
Help page helps. There's a lot of great documentations on how to use ggplot as well. What if, how many of you have ever heard of a regression line? Yes, so let's say I want to add a regression line to my GM points. And then I am going to change size equals 4 as well. And then so I actually going to drop this down. I am going to add geom smooth and method equals lm. And then I'm going to say sc equals false. If not, then it's going to look weird. So when you run this line, it's going to add lines to trend lines to it. And there you go. Now, I added trend lines. What if I did not want this SC? Instead of put it, I just did not even put it at all. So if I didn't put it at all, let's see what will happen. It would add error bars to it. So that's why I put it on there. I did not want to see it. But if you want to have that, you can do that there. What if I didn't add this method? Nope, wrong keys. If I did not add that method there, it's no longer going to be a line. It's going to be what we like to call like a weighted regression line, where it changes throughout, or a low S overall. Okay. So there are strengths and weaknesses for implementing the low S versus just a trend line. My advice is, if you do not know what the low S line is, this curvy one, just stick with LM, because someone will probably call you out if you add that. Okay, and this will give you a general trend idea. Are there any questions? Okay, so now let's talk about like customization. So this, we're just going to stick with this plot for right now. I'm going to store that in P5 because I made some changes and I kind of like how it is right now. But let's customize it. With P5, let's say I want to change how it looks like. So let's say theme, I'm going to do BW. When we change the theme of BW, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to run it, and it looks different. What if I want theme economist? Let's see what happens there. Looks completely different. So depending on what your needs are, you could play around with them. Now you get this from the GG themes package. Let's see, what else is out there? Economist, Excel, View, 538. Y'all know what 538 is? Maybe. It's now I think they closed down. So wrong one. Let's see, what else we got? Data. Let's see how Stata looks like. All right. I wonder if they have SAS as well. Nope, they don't have SAS. Okay. So when you run that, that's how you could change how it looks like. But you could do a lot more than that. So I am gonna stick with BW because that's personally my favorite. It's very simple, clean. When I like to choose a theme, very minimal, I prefer. Or if you're gonna use color, do not let the colors overpower the graph. Like the graph is there, the main story. The theme should not get in the way of that. What if I want to add a title? So to add a title, you're going to hit the plus sign, GG title, and then you add the title. So I'm going to just say Plot-A-Thon. And then now it has a title there. If I want to change the labels, I could put in plus, well, I like to do them separately. If I want to change the X lab, I could type in the X label, duration in minutes. And then when I run that, it is now duration in minutes. When I put in the Y lab, that should be number of wows. And then now number of wows, right? Now, how many of you can see what's going on? Probably not, right? And I should have probably done this a lot earlier, but if you click on this and you put size, if you do size dot x, or let's see, axis dot x. See if I remember this. This is so long. I'm just gonna do this at the bottom. Let's do 36, not that. Let's see if that worked. It's running everything. Well, notice that I changed the axis of this text. Axis dot. Let's see. Let me look at the help documentation for theme because I do not remember that one. Axis dot title. That was the one. There you go. My bad. So I was close. And notice that I forgot things, right? That's why you use that help documentation. Now they're bigger. Okay, so what if I want to change the plot title? Because it's really, really small, right? So I want to change the plot title. I'm going to type in element text. And then I'm going to say size is equal to, I'm going to do 48, even though that's probably overkill. A lot easier, right? And then last one is, as you saw before, axis.text. I'm gonna make this. Okay. So you could change a lot of the things that we have here. Are there any questions on this? Now, can you change the theme, the legend? Yes, you can. I currently do not remember how, but I'm pretty sure it is this one, legend text. So let's make this 24 as well. And now it's a lot bigger, right? And then I could change the title as well. So as you can see, you could change a lot of things within the ggplot. The theme function itself is basically the main power of changing like every little detail. You can even rotate the numbers, and for example, this 10 right here, you could rotate it in a certain way. Now, where do you get all this information? There's a lot of great tools online. If there's something that you want to change, I recommend Googling it. As you can see, there's so much we can do. Okay, I'm gonna last save this. How do y'all feel? It's a lot, right? But a lot of good things. Last thing, so how many of you remember everything that we talked about? How to plot. So this last thing is we're going to talk about Esquisse. If you've installed everything, it basically can do a lot of great things without remembering the code. So let's say you don't remember anything. In RStudio, you're going to click on this add-ins and you're going to use, you see Esquisse and ggplot2 builder. And then this pop-up window should create. And then you have this. So what you're going to do is you're going to select the data set. We're working with MDS, so we're just going to select that. And then you're going to import it. And you're not importing it to like the cloud or anything. At least I tested it out like without internet, it worked. And so let's say I want to create something. So I have wows here. I'm going to have that as my X. No, I'm going to have that as my X. Duration in minutes as my Y. So then it creates a GM point. Let's say I want to have the era in color. It's right there. Plot options. It doesn't do everything. But as you can see, you can do things to it. Labels. So my X label, what was that? Not that. Duration in minutes. My Y label, what was number of wows. My color label, movie era, let's call that. Okay. You can't, let's call this Plot-A-Thon. So I have most of it. Plot options. Now, if you unclick this smooth line, it will create those smooth plots, but I have no idea how to get rid of that standard error. So you're gonna have to do that yourself. But what do you notice? You can create some pretty cool plots in R without not needing to know that code. But let's say this is all you can get. They also have the code for you. Okay. And then so you place that there and you run it. It's a little bit different, but for overall, it's the same thing. There it is. Okay. And then they do theme minimal. You could change that to something else. And then what I would do is just copy this because I already created that to make it almost the same. Almost the same, right? That makes sense. And yeah. So if for some reason you can't remember how to create a plot, or you're competing in Plot-A-Thon and you have someone that doesn't remember or know the R code, Esquisse is a really good option. It will give you the majority of the plots. So let me go back to this. So I said error was color, duration, actually seconds, I think it's a little bit better. Whilst, so we have these points. Odd options. Obviously the points need to be bigger, you can't see those. But then you could click on here, maybe a jitter plot, see what happens. And not much is gonna change there. A tile, that'll be interesting what goes on there. So you could change different things. Area, let's see what that looks like. It's weird. Auto is okay, it reads it, they're two. I guess it doesn't do that. Okay, well, it's gonna be point. But let's get rid of that. So now it has histograms. I don't really like the colors personally, but it's okay. You could create violin plots. This takes its time. That's what I do notice that. Or maybe you can't. Maybe I have to do that there. There you go. Okay. You could create box plots. You create density plots. And do a lot of great things. The only thing you can't do is like if you need that extra customization, then you need to go into the R code. All right. That was it for me today. And you can also download this as whatever you needed to download it as well. So just letting you know. I'm gonna close that out. Are there any questions for me? By the way, this package, Esquisse, I think came out last year, so it's very cutting edge. It's really cool. So good for students who want to get into the R competition, but they don't have everything that they need for plot. Great. Well, it was a pleasure teaching you all this. If you have any questions, I'll stick around, but have a great rest of your day.